Hello everyone, Darren Gabbard here with 345 Auction. How are you? We are into session number 5 of the Bagale collection, our 5th auction of the collection of Dr. John Bagale. Dr. Bagale was quite the collector of German historical items, anywhere from, let's say, the German imperial era all the way through World War II. And this particular book comes from World War II, and it is Nazi propaganda. Now, everything that the Nazis did was propaganda, we all know that, but this has an interesting backstory to it. This is a reprint, came out in 1938. The book was originally from 1933, and it was edited by a fellow named Ernst Hanfstaengl. And he actually, I'll talk about him in a little bit, but what this is, the name of the book itself is Hitler in der Karikatur der Welt, so caricature of Hitler in the world, Tat gegen Tinte, so the act and the ink, or the ink and the act. I don't know how you would necessarily translate that specifically. But this is a collection of caricatures that were made of Hitler early on, actually. Most of these are from 1932 or 1933, right when Hitler rose to power as the Reich Chancellor. And they're not very flattering, absolutely not. You know, a lot of it is actually true. But what they did, what Ernst did here, was he would take the caricature itself, and then you would have what it said, or what it was supposed to have meant, what the caricature was, and then the rebuttal below it. Right? So this was the ink and this was the act. Now, here's the interesting thing. It was all lies. Absolutely every bit of it was a lie, but it didn't necessarily need to be true, at least for the Nazis. What they needed, what the Nazis needed, was a vehicle that would allow them to get their own interpretation into the public sphere. Right? All they had to do was get to people to read whatever their reasoning was for this particular caricature, or whatever this caricature said. Didn't matter if it wasn't true. It was an appeal to authority. And as soon as the authority came out and said, oh, that's not true, it's completely debunked, and it has absolutely no connection to the Fuhrer. As soon as that was said in this book, that became the standard response. Right? So again, it didn't need to be true. Let me give you an example here. So this particular caricature appeared in a French publication in 1933. I've got this in the link. I'll put a link in the video window below so that you can see this. And I've got a close-up picture of this in the lot description. Now, what the ink was supposed to have represented here with this particular caricature was that the entire world was against Hitler. And you see Hitler standing in front of a lot of newsprint, and the newsprint is saying horrible things about Hitler and the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Party, horrible, horrible things. And so the entire world is standing against Hitler. And then what the rebuttal said, in essence, was Hitler has worked so hard over the last couple of years to stabilize Germany and to get the other three nations, and it says here England, Italy, and France, along with Germany, to create peace in Europe. Now, if this is in 1933, obviously we know now that Hitler was already planning on going to war in Germany. So, this was a complete lie. But again, it was an appeal to authority so that the Nazis could get their story out. They didn't want to let their opposition stick them in a pigeonhole and tell everybody what they were supposed to be. So they did it themselves. Now let's get back to Ernst Hanfstaengl. He was the man who edited this and put these all together. He was actually a fairly close friend of Hitler, close enough that Hitler was godfather to his son Egon, right? Egon, or Ernst's son Egon. Ernst was born in America. He went to school in America. He graduated from Harvard in America right after the turn of the century. He knew a lot of people. He was one of these guys. He must have had money. His family must have had money because he was in the same circles as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? As Teddy Roosevelt. He knew all of these guys through Harvard. In 1922, he goes back to Germany, back to Munich, and he's asked by, and I can't remember the fellow's name, an American attaché at the embassy, to go find out about this Hitler guy, right? To go to a couple of his speeches and see what it's all about. He ended up liking Hitler. He loved the speeches. He thought that Hitler was, and Hitler was, in fact, a very good speaker in front of a crowd, and he really had him wound up. And he certainly had Ernst wound up, and Ernst began to associate with Hitler in an intimate basis, in a friendly basis. Of course, he was, Hitler was godfather to his son. Ernst was also instrumental in getting the Nazi propaganda machine up and running. Right after Hitler got out of jail and he had written Mein Kampf, Ernst was one of the people who put up the money to publish Mein Kampf, the very first edition. He was also instrumental in getting the Nazi Party newspaper, which was called the Völkischer Beobachter. I think that's how you pronounce it. I might have the accent in the wrong syllable, but he was instrumental in getting all of that together. This was the man who edited this particular book. Now, as often happened in Germany before the war, there was a lot of gossip, a lot of intrigue, palace intrigue that went through it, and it was eventually made clear to Ernst that he probably should leave Germany, and he did. He eventually got to America. And so here he was at one point working for and with Hitler, and a few years later he is in the United States working for and with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, telling people in the United States what he knew of all of the top Nazis that he had met. Very interesting. But that is not even the best part. His son Egon, right? He got his son out of Germany as well. His son Egon, in early 1941, joined the U.S. Army Air Corps. He was enlisted in the American Army before Pearl Harbor. And so, you've got Hitler's godson as a U.S. Army, I believe he was an officer. Is that not just wild? It sounds like a movie script. In fact, it probably is a movie script at some point. This particular collection of caricatures, this Nazi propaganda, anti-propaganda, I guess you might call it, is in our 5th auction. I will put a link to this particular piece in the video description below. If you have never bid with 345 Auction before and you'd like to bid on this collection of caricatures, you will need to register, and you can do that through that link as well. We've had a lot of interest from around the world in the first 4 auctions, so this is possibly something that you're going to have, if you want to bid on this, you're going to have some competition from around the world. I wouldn't necessarily say that it is out of reach, but just be aware. And if you want to bid on this, and I think you should, if you like this kind of stuff, I wish you luck.